Ayatsi, and I am an associate professor in pre-modern Japanese studies at the University of Cambridge in the UK. It is my great pleasure today to welcome rakugo master Tatekawa Shinoharu. Born in Osaka, Japan, Master Shinoharu spent a total of 7 years in the US during his childhood and college years. And after graduating from Yale University, he worked at Mitsui Corporation for 3 years. And in 2001, he was so greatly impressed and inspired by Master Tatekawa Shinosuke's rakugo that he decided to give up his career in a corporate firm and to become a professional rakugo performer himself. And after training for 17 years and a half under the tutelage of Master Shinosuke, Master Shinoharu was promoted to his current rank of Shin-uchi of Master in 2020. Master Shinoharu performs both traditional koten rakugo and stories and original stories, or shinsaku rakugo. Moreover, he is a very special rakugo performer because he performs not only in Japanese, but also in English. And he's in fact committed to promoting rakugo, the art of rakugo, globally. His performance at the opening ceremony of the 16th International Conference of the European Association of Japanese Studies in August 2021 has charmed a wide audience of scholars of Japanese studies. Alongside his performances in theaters, Master Shinoharu has a wonderful YouTube channel that brings his art to the world. So if you're not a subscriber, I really very much suggest that you have a look, and you would love it as I do. Master Shinoharu has also published 3 books, including an English rakugo CD book. Now, at the Faculty of Asian and Middle Eastern Studies at the University of Cambridge in the UK, we had the wonderful privilege to collaborate with him on several occasions. And the latest collaboration happened in conjunction with the 8th Summer School in Early Modern Japanese Paleography. This summer school trains the new generations of scholars in reading, transcribing, and translating early modern Japanese manuscripts and woodblock printed texts written in cursive squiggles. The 2021 summer school, we read several jest books and graphic narratives that dealt with humor and also with the origins of rakugo. And the collaboration with Master Shinoharu involved a number of activities, 2 public performances that have been attended by a huge audience from all over the world, and 2 workshops designed for the participants of the summer school. So in this interview, I would like to welcome again Master Shinoharu, and I would like to ask him to reflect on this collaboration. Master Shinoharu, very welcome to this interview. And you have kindly agreed to speak in English. And so
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. I will start with the first set of questions.
Yeah, before beginning, I would like to say that it was the most passionate and most thorough introduction of myself ever. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. I hope I didn't miss anything. First, for the summer school, you performed in Japanese 2 pieces of koten rakugo that a lot of your fans and of rakugo fans would know, Mikan and Chotan. And they are based on 2 short stories from early modern jest books, the 1772 Kanokomochi and the 1667 Rikutsu Monogatari. So our participants of the summer school transcribed these short stories, and you also kindly read them in preparation for the workshops. So my question is, was there any interesting discovery that you made by reading these early modern texts and then comparing them with the koten rakugo that you are trained to perform?
Well, I had always known that koten rakugo stories, the classical rakugo stories, came from short joke stories. that has origin in the Edo era and maybe earlier. And but I had never compared the rakugo stories with the original stories. Now, except for very, very few, I would say, just like Jugem or stories like that. So these two stories, Chotan and Mikan, which in rakugo is Chotan and Senryo Mikan. The original stories were very new to me. It was the first time for me to read those stories. And I must say that I had a lot of trouble reading those cursive writings.
Join the club.
But yes. But there were a lot of findings during the process. And for the story Chotan, which deals with a person who has a very patient person, long patience, and another character who has short temper. So long-tempered person and short-tempered person. And basically the story is a comparison of these two characters, very different characters. Now, rakugo focuses on the differences of these two different characters through the story. But the original story focuses on the punchline of the rakugo and just the one incident that happens at the end. And so I was able to find out that in informing the rakugo stories, maybe Chotan is a 15-minute story. They developed the two different characters and expressed the difference of these two characters before arriving at the incident at the end, which shows these two characters. And so I was able to learn how former rakugo performers developed a short story into a story, a rakugo story with maybe some emotion and character development. So that was a big finding for Chotan. And for Senryo Mikan, the gist of the story was the same with the original story. But in the rakugo story, it focused more again on the main character, who was the young son of a rich merchant, who had a craving for mikan or tangerine in the summer.
Yes.
And they were not able to get mikan during the summertime in the old days. And so in the original story, the son, the main character, fell ill in the beginning and then had a craving for mikan because it is juicy and it is nutritious, and probably it will be the only thing that he can digest in his sick body. But in the rakugo story, the order was changed, and the son became sick because his craving for mikan was too strong. And so it became a more eccentric character. And that added funniness or the taste to the story.
Yeah.
And so creating a character with somewhat absurd, eccentric character made the story, the very, very short story, into a long. Senryo Mikan is like a 30-minute, 40-minute story, a longer rakugo, more complicated story, I guess.
Yeah, and I must say that your wonderful ability to bring these characters to alive.
じゃあちょっとね、一服させてもらうよ。いやー、だけどさ、不思議なもんだね。だってこうしてさ、監視さんとさ、私なんてね、昔からの中でさ、ねえ、気性なんか全く違うんだよ。
you can see them, you can, we don't see you anymore, we see the character. And in Senyo Mikan, we actually could even sort of taste this tangerine in the way you were describing it. That was absolutely masterful. And that certainly is very different from reading the short, very short story. So has this experience changed your engagement with Koten Rakugo, if at all? If so, how?
Yes. So we perform Koten Rakugo, classical Rakugo, daily, and but we change them little by little to suit the audience of the present time. And I think that's a process that Rakugo performers in Meiji, Taisho, and Showa eras all went through. And so to have a feel of the origin and the present of the stories, I had a clearer idea of how I could change the stories to suit maybe the future audience as well, and the extent to how much I could change the stories and still call it classical stories.
That's really fascinating to hear. And I think that brings also to the next set of questions, which is around your Shinsaku Rakugo. This time we ask you probably a tough job, which was to create 2 brand new pieces of Shinsaku Rakugo, but inspired by early modern materials, and in particular inspired by this quack doctor, fictional doctor, whose name was Chikusai. And his very, humorous, incredible treatments appeared in the 17th century text entitled Chikusai, and also in a later text, an 18th century picture book entitled Chikusai Ro Takara no Yamabuki Iro. And Chikusai was extremely popular in the Edo period for 3 centuries, 1718, up to the really second half of the 19th century. And then somehow he never make it into the canon of Koten Rakugo. So we ask you to bring him back to life. And you did it in 2 amazingly hilarious performances.
何耳のところから変な。あ、いかん、これ脳みそだ。脳みそでございますか？ああ、これいかんな。脳みそが耳の穴から出てきそうになっている。そうだ、脳みそも水気があるから吸い寄せられて出てこようとしている。よっこいしょ、どっこいしょ、よっこいしょ、どっこいしょ、よっこいしょ。じゃあ、そろそろな。残りが少なくなってきたから、一気にな、ヒューッと、これをな、引き抜きなさい。わかりました。いいんですか？これ、ゆっくりと、もうちょっと、
So I do have a lot of questions around this, because for me it was such an incredible job you did there. So first of all, how was this experience for you? How did you find it inspiring or not? How? So that's the first question.
Okay. So I went through the materials, the Chikusai and books. And I must say that I had even more difficult time than the first 2 stories going through them. And but they were funny, and it's surprisingly, well, I did not know at all about Chikusai character, and all the people I have talked to in Japan about this story have never knew about Chikusai. And so anyway, I went through the materials, and I was thinking of creating one story in the beginning. And then I hit 2 stories, short stories. That was very, very interesting, and thought maybe I can make into a short rakugo story. So I changed my plan in the midway through and decided to make two, which was a very bad choice for me because it was
A lot of work.
yes. But yes, and through my research of those stories, in trying to think about stories that I could make into rakugo, I saw a kyogen story play, which had koyaku, sui koyaku as a material. And there was a kyogen play called Koyaku Neri. And yes.
よくご存知ですね. You know, wow, very impressive here.
Yes. So Koyaku Neri is like two, I guess, doctors from the western part of Japan, maybe from Kyoto, and one's from eastern part of Japan, Kamakura. They're bragging about their sui goyaku, and they're bragging, mine is better than yours, mine is better than yours, and they compete with each other, and they start pulling each other with their sui goyaku. And I think the action was very, very funny in those kyogen stories. And so, but we have to take a different approach in rakugo, because we don't actually show two people playing these two characters and actively doing something funny. So I had to create a story, build a story on those two very, very short pieces that I picked up. And one was about sui goyaku, and another was about koyori. So basically two sort of, I must say, dirty stories.
Yes, they were. Things going through the body.
Yes, things going
or
through the body.
pulling the body.
Yes. But they were very, very funny. And I could picture them becoming a rakugo story. So, and it was exciting because I knew that it was the process how classical rakugo stories were formed. So I was going back to the original and doing the same process that many former rakugo performers did. And the process itself was quite exciting for me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the process then, the creative process?
Okay, so about sui goyaku, I started thinking about, so I saw the kyogen story and I tried to make it different from that. And in the beginning, I thought I needed to introduce the two characters, Chikusai and Niraminosuke, to show their relationships. So I started out by doing that. And then, wait a minute, I have my script over here. And then, so I decided that there should be, I needed to elaborate on the characters and also the reasons why they act in a certain way. So in the original story, it was basically for sui goyaku, a doctor, quack doctor going to a pregnant lady's place where the pregnant lady has plum stuck in her throat, or in her what do you call it? Yes,
in the throat.
Yes, in the throat, and he pulls it out with the sui goyaku.
Yeah, because this sui goyaku sucks. It's a sucking ointment, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So he sucks it, and then, but in the process, the sui goyaku is so strong that it pulls the lady's face into the middle, her eyes and nose toward the mouth, and then so he gets into trouble, and all the people surrounding the lady blame the quack doctor, and he runs away. And I guess that was the ending of the original story. And for a rakugo story, I had to create a happier ending than that. I couldn't end the story because it would be sort of a cruel ending in modern days. So I thought I had to return the lady's face to normal state. And so in order to return it to the normal state, I added the last scene where Chikusai and Niraminosuke press the suigoyaku, which they paste on a piece of paper to the lady's ears to pull her eyes and nose apart from the middle to make it come back to where it was.
水合薬をな、耳のところにこう当てる。な。で、お前がそっちの耳のところにその水合薬を当てる。そうすると耳のところから引っ張られてな、こう近くに寄っていた顔がふーっと外にな、ふーっと外に戻ってくるから。本当ですか？そんな風にうまくいくんですか？ああ、いくんだ。いや、水合薬には水合薬でやらなくてはいけない。これは水合薬返しという技だ。へえ、そうなんですか。いろんなのありますね。うん、とにかくやってみなきゃわからないので、いいか、ここの耳の穴のところだ。行くぞ、そっちもな。よしと。お前もやったか。はい。こっちもやりました。うん。これで。おい、どうだ。顔が少しずつ外に離れていくぞ。あ、本当でございますね。
And in the process, but they had to get into another trouble situation. So I decided that they were in the process pulling out the brain of this lady.
Yeah, sorry, I'm still laughing because it was so graphic the way you performed it. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. And so they would be going, no, miso. And but they stuffed some paper inside and the lady is fine. And then, I had to make sure that the lady is looking the same as she was before.
Yeah.
And the plum was out. And so everything is okay, but they have to run away before people noticed that they were almost going to get the brain out. Yeah. And so they couldn't receive the reward. But and then the last process was making the punchline. Yeah. And I ended it with I came up with several punchlines. But I ended up with a wordplay. So suimasen could also in Japanese means I'm sorry, and also it does not suck.
Yeah.
So yes, I ended up with a or also suimasen could also mean thank you.
Yeah.
So yes, the lady's family was thanking the quack doctor for curing her. So suimasen with the word suimasen, which means thank you. And at the end, Chikusai says, no, I suck too much. It's not suimasen. I suisugimashita. It's like I sucked too much. So that was wordplay for the ending.
すいませんでした。いえ、すいませんどころか少し吸いすぎました。
It must be so difficult to come up with word plays, but that I must say was absolutely masterful. At that point, it really brought everything together so nicely. Yeah.
Yes, so that was a punchline that I liked. Another candidate punchline was so because the ao ume, the sour plum, was sour. In Japanese, it's suppai. So it was another wordplay, but Chikusai would be saying, "Mono ga ao ume dake ni suppai shimashita," which is like I failed. Yeah. So yes. So that was
it must be so difficult to choose between these two equally wonderful punchlines.
Yeah.
So very much for sorry.
Yeah, it was suimasen would be better to wrap up the story.
Yeah. No, incredible. So very much not only you had to think about how to make the ending acceptable for an audience and for the audience to go back home happy, but also to add a punchline that was not there in the story. That's fantastic. What about the koyori story then? What about the paper string thing?
for the coyote story, the thing I thought about was to come up with a purpose and for the person who is sick, to be able to cure that situation in a short time.
Yeah.
And so I created a situation where the man, the sick person who has what is it, phlegm?
Phlegm.
Yeah, in his throat, stuck for a long time, and he had to get it out because he was going to have a sort of a concert of himself, and it was bothering him, and he had already invited his guests, and they were looking forward to the live concert, the old style Gidayu concert, and so he had to get rid of that. So he could not wait for medicine to take effect. So he had to do it quickly, and that was the situation on their side.
旦那様、今こちらの方から盛りのついたアシカのような声が聞こえてまいりましたけれども、旦那様大丈夫でございますか？
And so basically this situation I thought could also be cured with suigoyaku. So I had a choice of making joining these two incidents into one story.
Yeah.
For suigoyaku. But I thought the coyote was very, very, if I picture the situation, very, very funny. So I thought about just forgetting about suigoyaku for this incident.
Yeah.
And then putting a line in for Niraminosuke.
Yeah.
Saying, Doctor, you made a big mistake the last time. You got the lady's face into the middle, and we don't want that kind of problem. We have to come up with another solution for this situation.
Yeah.
So to get away from that situation, to Shiri Coyote situation. And from there, yeah.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And
Basically,
I must say, it was really very real, the way you described this paper string going through the body of this guy.
それでは旦那様、すぐにもうやってしまいますのでよろしゅうございますか？ではお口を開けてくださいます。はい、お口をと開けていただきまして、はい、じゃあいいですか？少しずつ入れていきますよ。はい、どうぞ。はい、そうです。はいはいはいはい。はい、どんどん入っていきます。これは、結構でございます。すぐに終わりますから、安心してください。このまんまでございますからね。はいはいはい。で、いいか、Niraminosuke、お前はね、お尻の方で出てきたら、それをすぐに捕まえるようにするんだぞ。わかりました。ここですね。ふんどしが邪魔ですんで、ちょっとふんどし、取ってしまいますね。何をする結構でございますね。心配。
But then you also added a punchline there. Sorry to ask you this. Yeah.
Yes. I had trouble thinking up this punchline more than the other one. So I may come up with another punchline in the future for this story. But basically, the man was cured after this coyote, the long piece of paper, was pulled through his body and through the bottom, and his phlegm came out with the coyote, and so he was cured. And in the end, the man who was cured says, "Next time, please give me a bigger coyote, or もう少し太い fatter coyote." Basically meaning he sort of liked or enjoyed the situation.
Yeah, I think everyone was really laughing so much at this naughty idea that you added as a twist, really.
Yes.
Yeah. And really, it makes also me think how much the punchline is important in rakugo vis-a-vis these other stories where not necessarily there was a punchline at the end. So,
and shirikoyori is also a very, when you think about it, it's a situation which is impossible. I mean, you know, every present day person would think, oh, that is not possible. So I had to sort of link it to a similar situation that we have in everyday life, and to make the situation a bit believable.
Yeah.
And so in the process, I came up with my own experience of sneezing while I was eating udon, and then udon coming through my nose and then pulling it out. And that is sort of painful, but also very, very relieving. And so I linked the two experiences together to make it a little bit believable for the shirikoyori situation.
That's interesting to hear, that you have to think of, you have to factor in what the audience, whether the audience will find it plausible or not. Very interesting. And it seems to me that from what you were explaining in the previous question about the koten rakugo, but also from this one, that you have put a lot of work in giving the characters a voice and a personality. And I must say, I was really, really moved to hear Chikusai talking. I actually shed a little tear there, because I worked, as you know, many years on Chikusai, the early modern. Never heard his voice, obviously, but then you gave him a voice and a personality. And it seems to me that you had to do this for all the four pieces that you performed. So I'm very interested in understanding, how did you give life to these two characters, Chikusai and his servant, Niraminosuke? Because in the original text, in the early modern text, they are left pretty much undeveloped. They're very three-dimensional. Whereas when you brought them to life, they were three-dimensional. They had a personality. So tell us more about this, please.
Yes. First of all, I began with the Chikusai character. And so he is a quack doctor, a terrible doctor who makes mistakes all the time, but runs away, but is funny, and sort of has his excuses all the time. And so in forming his character, I thought I would give him a convincing voice which says stupid things.
Can you do it for me a little tiny bit?
にらみのすけ、こっちへ来なさい。お前な、表札をな、表にぶら下げといてくれるか。ここが何をやっているところだかわかるように。So, something like
yes,
that.
It's absolutely, you know, you couldn't have chosen a better voice for Chikusai, really.
So yeah, kind of a serious sounding, convincing, trying to be convincing kind of voice, but the contents of his talk is completely not, and that would make a very, very humorous character, I thought. So I started out from there. I didn't try to make him sound very foolish to begin with, because it would probably lose the humor from that character.
I see.
And then I thought about Niraminosuke, and that was where I came into trouble, because I could not find from the book how old he was, and I did not. I sort of thought maybe he was in his late teens or early 20s. A young man, I thought, from what I received from the book. But I thought in comparison with this convincing sounding quack doctor, I should make him a simple-minded, pure, trusting the doctor kind of little child character. And that relationship would be a good combination than a young lad.
Can you do a little bit Niraminosuke for us?
私ね、先生のことすごいと思ってるんですよ。だってね、いろいろ学んでね、お薬のことも勉強して、病人を治す医者ってのはたくさんいますけれども、先生みたいに勉強しないでお薬のことも知らないで、それでも時々ね、病人治す医者ってのはほとんどいないですから、先生すごいです。
He's so cute. You cannot but love the poor Niraminosuke. Yes. Oh.
Yeah, yeah. So he has trust, he has trust in this doctor, and he wants to be like
him.
Chikusai. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I must say it was wonderful to see this pair coming together, and it must be very difficult to go through this creative process. Can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced in this process? Or?
Yes. So in the process, well, what have I said already? Basically, the biggest challenge was forming the characters. So when I had that rolling, then the story came alive, and so and when I had the voices, the words came out. So the story was formed. About at the same time.
How interesting. So really the characters bring also the story to life. That's very interesting to hear. So two more questions, the last two questions, I think, on this part of the interview. Have you learned anything from this experience that might stay with you, resonate with you, and your next Shinsaku Rakugo projects?
Oh, definitely, very much. Because I had thought that I was running out of materials for my original new stories, but now I feel that there's plenty of materials. I mean, and this Chikusai character was very, very funny. And I think he's still alive now. I have performed this story, Suigoyaku story, in front of live audience, and it gave a lot of laughs. So yeah, to the audience, and it went like the story, the temperature of the audience went up as the story progressed.
Really?
Especially when the brain spilled out. So they were laughing very much. So yes, I have confidence now that I can make other classical materials, literatures, short jokes into a modern rakugo.
That's amazing,
so
because
its possibility is infinite.
Yeah, and that's amazing because in a way you are also giving a new meaning to Shinsaku Rakugo in a way, because you are using early modern materials that never made it into koten to do Shinsaku, and I think you have the potential to really change the way in which we conceive Shinsaku Rakugo. It's amazing.
Yes, and by making the stories in this way, I can sort of fool the audience that they were classical stories to begin with, which they did not know.
Yeah,
so I could just like pretend like this is a classical rakugo, and so it's not like an original new story. I could pretend that it was a part of the history, rakugo history, and then later say, oh, this is something I made.
Well, I think that you are making new rakugo history here, really, which is very amazing, I must say. So the Suigoyaku piece might stay in your repertoire then?
Yes, and it's just that I had had not had the chance to do the shirikoyori, but I'm sure shirikoyori will stay in my repertoire as well. So both stories will be saying.
Fantastic. I can't wait to be in Japan in a real theater and seeing you performing in person and not on a virtual stage as happened this summer. But fantastic. It seems to me that you are very experimental with Shinsaku Rakugo because, and this is my third big question, you, in the past, you have also used an English literature material for your Shinsaku. And in particular, you used Shakespeare's The Winter's Tale and created a rakugo style remake of this very classic of English literature. And one of my dreams is to have you over here in the UK and perform that story in front of English lit people. So we're working on that. But in the meantime, can you tell us a little bit about this incredible experience creating Shinsaku Rakugo out of Shakespeare?
Yes, it was just for a challenge event that I had. And so I put some challenges on myself and in making some new stories. And so one of those was creating a rakugo story or adapting a Shakespeare story into rakugo style. And so I chose the story, The Winter's Tale, because it seemed to have the serious part and also the humorous part. And so the balance was very good, and I thought it would make a good rakugo story. So I chose it, and basically the process was transplanting the scenery and the characters into Japanese historical places and persons' names. So I gave Japanese names to the characters. So for Leontes is from Sicilia, Sicily, and in the Japanese version it's Shichiria-o. So his name became Mr. Shichiria with a kanji character, and the Bohemia, the Polixenes character became Horiguchi-san, Horiguchi Otono-sama, Horiguchi no Otono-sama. Shichiria no Otono-sama, so two lords.
Yeah.
And so I changed the names into Japanese names, and I made them the setting into Japan.
Yeah, yeah.
And basically the storyline I followed the original. I did not change too much.
Yeah. So overall, would you say that the creative process of taking Shakespeare's and making it into rakugo and taking chikusai and making it into rakugo was a similar process, or was it different?
Well, so in taking Shakespeare's story into rakugo, there are parts I thought when I was making the rakugo version that the Japanese audience who are not familiar with the original theater Shakespeare, Winter's Tale, would have question marks in their minds for like the king's words, where he said one thing in this moment, and then right after that he says something else, and then so his words keep changing, and you have trouble following his emotion.
I see. Yeah.
And from the Japanese point of view, the present Japanese point of view. And so for those situations, I put in the boke to tsukkomi system in Japanese manzai, where one person says something absurd and the other person points it out, and it becomes a laughter. And so I put in a narrative narrator character who does boketto or tsukkomi, who serves as the tsukkomi character to the king's, basically the king's phrases, which seem not to make sense.
Yeah.
So what the narrator would be saying, wait a minute, you said 30 seconds before, you said this, and now you're saying this. What's wrong with you? Or something like that. And then go continue with the story. And
It's
also,
really, sorry.
Yes, please.
No, it's really fascinating to see how you, in your creative process, you really think about the audience's responses all of the time. And this is a skill that maybe even as teachers should really keep in mind, what the response of the audience, in our case, the students, will be, and preempt it. I think it's a fantastic ability to preempt what the audience wants and needs. Fantastic. Sorry. You were continuing.
and yes, the biggest part of the story that I felt that I had to deal with the audience's feeling was at the end, which ends sort of like a happy ending where things settle how they should settle. But then I had feeling for two characters who seem to have been forgotten, and that was Mamilius and Antigonus. These two characters who died in a very sad incident in the story, but their deaths were not reflected at the end. And so they were sort of like forgotten characters, and all the others who were left were saying like, okay, so now it's happy. And I had to deal with the audience feelings about, what about these two guys, the guy who got eaten by the bear and the little kid who died right in the beginning. And so I had them come out at the end as sort of like ghost characters.
Oh, how interesting.
Saying like, and they came out and saying, don't you think everyone's forgotten about us? I mean, what was the purpose of us? What did we serve in this story? And these two little kid and the middle-aged man talking to each other, and they're saying, but if it hadn't been for me, the little daughter would have been dead, maybe have been eaten by the bear, or so we saved some lives with our deaths, and so our lives meant something. That's right.
That's a fantastic human touch, but also such a meta, right? A meta sort of narrative touch. Fascinating.
So I had them talk about that, and so in the end I was just talking to the audience, so they became convinced that they served a position in the story, and they served something for the good. So in the end they would be going bye-bye, but don't forget about us. So that would be,
I can't wait to see that performance, I must say. Since the day you told me you created this rakugo out of Shakespeare, I just want to see it. So fingers crossed there.
So that's the way of ending a rakugo story. Just settling the feeling of the audience and making them go back and just having a good feeling. In theater, I think it's probably necessary to have them go back thinking of many options, many things that, possibilities. But in rakugo story, sort of settling the emotion part, I think is necessary.
Very interesting, really very interesting. So I have, two more questions, really. One is about the workshops, because you have been so generous with us, and not only you gave public performances, but also you took the time and the trouble to meet with the participants who read these stories and really work hard on them, and then saw your wonderful performances and then talked with them. How did you find this experience of doing workshops with students who don't necessarily work on rakugo, but on something that is connected to rakugo?
Well, yeah, I always enjoy workshops and Q&A sessions, and it's always very, very exciting for me, where I receive questions that I do not expect or have not received from Japanese audiences. And I think I received a lot of very new insightful questions. And but the one big surprise was that I thought that I would be receiving, especially my second session, I would be receiving a lot of questions about the chikusai related questions, and also like forming the chikusai story kind of question. And from what I recall, the most passionate question came from you, and and the other students' questions focus more on the general side of rakugo.
Yeah.
Not the chikusai part, but more like my training, apprentice training, and like more broader questions. So I thought it was very, very interesting. Yes.
Yeah, I think that it's also this incredible opportunity to be able to speak with a master of your caliber. And I think that everyone thought this is a wonderful opportunity to ask all the questions we always wanted to ask, but we can't. So I think they took the opportunity there. Yeah, and thank you really for your generosity with us all, because we have learned so much, not only about, from my questions, the creative process, but also your life as a rakugo master. And I think that some of your answers were really impressive and made us think about our own lives and our own approach to work. So thank you again for that. I think the last question on my part is, on this instance, we ask you to, obviously you explained to us that rakugo is very much an art that does not have a written text at its core. You explained that you learned by imitating, listening to your master, trying it out, and then getting feedback, which is all oral. Whereas this time we kind of forced you to engage with written texts, and that's our daily life, written text, right? But not necessarily yours. So do you think that there is any merit in going back to early modern texts when, dealing with rakugo, both koten or shinsaku? I think you already replied to this, but if you can just reflect on this point as a sort of closing up, that would be
Yes, I think this summer school came at a very good time for me, because if I did not have 17 and a half years of training, I would not have been able to give voice to chikusai or nirami no suke. And basically, it is what we learned during the apprentice years and from the oral tradition. And we create many characters within ourselves during the copying process, and then use those experiences to form new characters. So if it had been 5 years ago, probably it would have been a different character. If it had been 10 years ago, I don't know if I would be able to create the characters. And so, and forming, imagining characters and forming characters through written text, I think is crucial for us. And it would be very, very useful from now to the future for me. I would be going through that process to make some new stories.
So if we find some interesting readings, can we send them towards you for
Please.
food for thought?
Please send them, and please set a deadline for me, because if I don't have a deadline, I will do nothing.
Okay, I'm taking your words
Yes.
literally.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to add that I didn't give you the chance to say?
Well, no, I think you put in almost everything. I think so. I think maybe in the process of making the new stories, I thought about putting human relationship between the characters, developing the human relationship between the two characters, or the main characters, and sort of showing the change in the emotional state of each character, and that is tied to the purpose of their actions. And so building the relationship part and the emotion part was the biggest thing that I needed in forming the stories.
Yeah, and certainly that was not provided by the written text at all, because really the protagonists are not three-dimensionals, whereas yours are. Yes. Thank you very much, Master Shinoharu. We have learned a lot. It was such a privilege to be able to collaborate with you. And as I said, I really look forward to hearing more of your fantastic rakugo. And thank you for bringing rakugo to, in a way, to worldwide and being appreciated worldwide, but also to try and make new history in it. So thank you very much for being such a wonderful.
Thank you very much. Oh, and Professor Moretti, I have one more thing to add.
Hi.
That I learned from this summer's experience.
Yeah.
Is that it was one of the rare experience for me to read cursive writings, the kana.
Yeah.
In kana moji, so basically all entirely in hiragana. And but that experience led me into reforming the classical stories that I had already known and performed. And there is a story called Tarachine, which deals with a newly married couple, but this newly married wife comes from a higher class, or she was raised in a higher class education, and she speaks in a very different way from the husband Hachiko, who is Edo, just ordinary person. So the way of her speech goes, when Hachiko, can I just
absolutely,
use some of your time? Okay.
Yes.
So they get married, and Hachiko is like, well, welcome to my house. Oh yeah, I the person who introduced you forgot to mention your name. So could you tell me your name? And the way she talks is like, 自らことの生命は父は元京都の山にして生は安藤なわけぞあざなおここと申せしが我が母33歳の折あるよ誕生を夢見てわらわをはらめるがゆえにたらじねの体内を入れしときはつるじょと申せしがそれは幼名成長の後これは改め清女と申しはべるなり So that was her introduction, right? And so she goes through the entire introduction. But Hachiko is like, いい名前、長い名前だね. So he goes like, wow, that's a great name. But I can't memorize your name. So can you write it down on this paper? So he gives her a paper and she writes it down. And Hachiko says, and I can't read kanji. So write it in kana, hiragana. And so she writes it. And the way that we are taught in classical rakugo apprenticeship, or from in our history, is Hachiko receives it and he goes, 長いね。自らことの生命は 父はもときやうとうの三にして、聖は安堵なわけぞあざなおぼこともせしだ。So it goes like this. But from my experience, everyone does it this way. But from my experience, I thought, okay, it's a little bit different. So I went, 自らことのせ姫ひは父はもときあうとうの三にしてせいはあんだふまたけいざふあざなおごかふともまうせしが
歴史的仮名遣い yes yes absolutely.
So had she written in properly, it would be like not mo seshiga, but mau seshiga or mau seshiga.
Indeed.
So I changed it to, it would be more authentic.
Yeah, you made my day, because one of the things that really our participants of the summer school scratches their heads with is rikishiteki kanazukai. Why is it mau seshi instead of mo useshi? Fantastic. It's really incredible to hear what a written text can contribute to, a long tradition of oral, learning. Thank you. You made my day. Absolutely.
That's great. So you can see how simple-minded Hachiko just reads.
Yeah, because he can't.
What is written there?
I already see the next performance. I think it should be that one.
Yeah. It would be perfect. Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you very much, Master Shinoharu. It has been absolutely a wonderful privilege to hear from you all about, how you created this fantastic world that you bring to life on stage. I will keep listening to your fantastic YouTube channel. And thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.